Ancient Egypt's weird way to test pregnancy. Imagine living 4,000 years ago, along the banks of the Nile River. You're a woman wondering if you might be pregnant. But there are no modern tests, no doctors with ultrasounds, and definitely no pharmacy down the street. So what do you do? Well, if you lived in ancient Egypt, you'd grab some barley, some wheat, and prepare for one of history's most bizarre pregnancy tests. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of ancient Egyptian medicine to uncover a pregnancy test so weird, so unusual, that when modern scientists first heard about it, they thought it was complete nonsense. But here's the shocking twist: it actually worked. And the science behind why it worked will absolutely blow your mind. Our story begins in 1928, when archaeologists discovered an ancient Egyptian papyrus dating back to around 1350 BCE. This wasn't just any ordinary document. It was a medical text filled with remedies, treatments, and diagnostic methods that would make modern doctors scratch their heads in bewilderment. Among the various medical procedures described in this papyrus was a pregnancy test that seemed completely ridiculous. According to the ancient text, if a woman suspected she might be pregnant, she should urinate on two separate piles of grain, one containing barley seeds and another containing wheat seeds. But wait, it gets weirder. The instructions didn't stop there. The woman was supposed to urinate on these grain piles daily and then wait. If neither pile sprouted, she wasn't pregnant. If the barley sprouted first, she was carrying a boy. If the wheat sprouted first, she was carrying a girl. When modern scholars first translated this text, they dismissed it as ancient superstition. I mean, come on, peeing on grain to determine pregnancy? It sounded like something out of a fairy tale, not a legitimate medical procedure. For decades, this method was filed away as just another example of primitive thinking from our ancestors. Medical historians chuckled at the idea. Anthropologists used it as evidence of how little ancient people understood about human biology. The general consensus was clear. This was pure nonsense. A desperate attempt by ancient people to make sense of pregnancy using the limited knowledge they had available. But then, in 1963, something incredible happened. A group of scientists decided to actually test this ancient method. Dr. Greet Bybring and her colleagues at Harvard Medical School thought, what if we're wrong? What if there's something to this crazy ancient test? So they conducted a proper scientific experiment. They collected urine samples from pregnant women and non-pregnant women, then applied these samples to barley and wheat seeds, exactly as the ancient Egyptians had described. The results were absolutely mind-blowing. The urine from pregnant women caused the seeds to sprout 70% of the time, while the urine from non-pregnant women rarely caused any sprouting at all. Suddenly, this primitive 4,000-year-old test was proving to be remarkably accurate, more accurate than many early modern pregnancy tests. So how on earth does this work? The answer lies in the fascinating chemistry of pregnancy hormones. When a woman becomes pregnant, her body begins producing a hormone called human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG. This hormone serves as the foundation for virtually every modern pregnancy test. But here's where it gets really interesting. HCG isn't the only hormone that increases during pregnancy. Pregnant women also produce elevated levels of estrogen, and estrogen has a remarkable property. It can act as a growth stimulant for plants. The elevated estrogen levels in pregnant women's urine create an environment that encourages seed germination. It's like a natural fertilizer that tells the seeds, hey, it's time to grow. This is why the barley and wheat seeds sprouted when exposed to pregnant women's urine but remained dormant when exposed to non-pregnant women's urine. This discovery completely revolutionized how we think about ancient medicine. It proved that our ancestors weren't just randomly throwing together weird concoctions and hoping for the best. Instead, they were careful observers who noticed patterns and developed practical solutions based on real biological phenomena. The ancient Egyptians might not have understood the science behind estrogen and plant growth, but they definitely understood the results. Through generations of observation and testing, they had developed a pregnancy test that worked better than anything humans would invent again until the 20th century. Now, you might be wondering about the gender prediction aspect, the idea that barley sprouting meant a boy and wheat sprouting meant a girl. Unfortunately, this part doesn't hold up to scientific scrutiny. While the presence of pregnancy hormones can stimulate plant growth, there's no biological mechanism that would cause different hormones to be produced based on the baby's gender in a way that would affect which type of grain sprouts first. So while the Egyptians got the pregnancy detection part remarkably right, the gender prediction was likely just wishful thinking or coincidental correlation that they observed over time. It's important to understand that this test wasn't developed in isolation. Ancient Egypt had one of the most sophisticated medical systems of the ancient world. Egyptian physicians were renowned throughout the Mediterranean for their knowledge and skill. They performed complex surgeries, created detailed anatomical studies, and developed treatments that remained effective for thousands of years. The grain pregnancy test fits perfectly into this context of advanced medical knowledge. These weren't primitive people stumbling around in the dark. They were skilled practitioners who understood human biology far better than we've traditionally given them credit for. Interestingly, modern pregnancy tests work on a similar principle, though with much more precision. Today's tests detect the presence of hCG hormone in urine, just like the ancient Egyptian test detected elevated hormone levels, albeit through a completely different mechanism. The main difference is that modern tests can detect pregnancy much earlier, sometimes just days after conception, while the Egyptian grain test probably required several weeks of hormone buildup to be effective. So the next time someone dismisses ancient knowledge as primitive superstition, remember the story of Egypt's grain pregnancy test. Remember that 4,000 years ago, along the banks of the Nile, women were using a pregnancy test that was more accurate than anything available to women in the Western world until the 1960s. This remarkable discovery reminds us that human ingenuity and observational skills have been operating at high levels throughout our history. Our ancestors may not have had our modern scientific instruments, but they had something equally valuable: patience, observation, and the wisdom to trust what actually worked, even when they couldn't fully explain why. The ancient Egyptians truly were ahead of their time, and their weird way of testing pregnancy stands as a testament to human creativity and the enduring power of practical wisdom passed down through generations.